Hello everyone. Now, so far I've done about 3 videos based off the company I work for. And you know, I'm obviously not going to say their name because not only do they not want me to, but I don't want to either. It's private. I don't want you guys to figure out, oh, he works at that place, let's go drive all the way there and meet him. No, forget that. And it's because of that why there probably won't be an insane amount of pictures in this blog. It's going to be a little bit on the shallow end, but that's not what's important. What's important is if it gets interesting. That's what's important. It hasn't been since 2022 that you guys have heard anything about my work, unless it's like a vague update or something. And 2 of those videos don't even fall under the Behemoth Blogmaster name, but they could still be very easily confused for blogs. These days, if I'm gonna make a video that's not BBM, it has to be a different category, like something completely different. Because I have mentioned this before, but people often confuse the word video for episode, even though that wouldn't be the correct term. So yeah, that's why I'm trying harder to work on different categories for anybody who is too bum-ass to just read the titles. Enough interesting changes have happened within the past year to justify doing another blog, so that's what I'm gonna do. Before I mention the new changes though, I need to tell you that this company is really good. Like, they're very clean and they actually care about their employees, which is very hard to find, and that's kind of a necessity for someone like me. It's been that way since longer than I've been there, I'm pretty sure. Unless, of course, the appearance of the Kale has changed everybody's hearts. I don't think that would be the reason. They're just really kind people, and that's awesome. They're very polite, and it's almost like my third family, kinda. Not quite, but kinda. You'd be surprised how good these guys are. And many of them are fans of Kale-Idle-Scope, which at first I really wanted to keep in between a shipping crew, but after I realized these guys aren't gonna judge like, you know, people back in school did, it doesn't matter. You guys can hop on a board, I don't care. Make yourself at home. And yeah, I say they're like my third family, sort of, except that it really sucks that people leave without much warning. Like, I would have said goodbye first before they had left. So I've been told some of my coworkers have actually been fired, but I can't imagine what for. I guess good people and good employees are 2 different things. And yeah, if you remember that stuck video from like the summer before last summer, I had worked with a total of 7 people. Today, 13. I have had 13 different coworkers, which is including myself, so technically 12. Not all at once, obviously, but I've just been keeping track of how many people have worked in the shipping building since I've been there for 2 years. Started in December of 2021, let's make it to December 2025, because why the hell not? I've also stamped out a certain minimum for how long these guys need to work back there for them to classify as true co-workers, like to become real part of the club. And I say this because we've had like 2 guys that have only worked 1 and 2 days respectively. The minimum is 1 month, and honestly that's not that hard to reach, that minimum. I mean, it's very simple. But we had a guy named John who worked there for only 2 days, but he had to leave because of a family dilemma or emergency or whatever.
John's getting upset!
And another guy, Damien, who only worked there for 1 day because he wasn't that kind of my supervisor, so he got fired. So I don't want to include those 2 people because they didn't really have enough time to just, you know, grasp the holiness of this company and the shipping department. They weren't here for long enough, I'm sorry. I mean, I could have stamped out any amount of time. This is kind of something that I'm just imagining here, it's not like legit. I could have said 2 months or 2 weeks, but 1 month, okay? Would you have picked a better span of time? And also, this is gonna sound random, but one of my coworkers kind of reminds me of Willem Dafoe. Gil from Finding Nemo, or Green Goblin from Spider-Man. He just kind of looks like him, and you know what, I told him that, and he's like, I'll take it. Ain't nothing wrong with looking like Dafoe. It's not a perfect resemblance, but I'm moving on. The title of this episode is called Crafting a New Freedom, and I say this in the context that I am no longer just their inventory guy. I have other tasks now. This includes wiping the sleeves, scanning documents, and taking out the trash whenever it gets too full. Yeah, inventory is still my primary occupation, but that had to change for a little while because, well, someone thought it was a good idea to demolish every single room that was back there. Everything but for 2 bathrooms that are near the front of the building. Other than those though, everything is gone. Which is why I'm glad I made that diagram in 2022 when I still had the chance to. I am very glad I did that. If you're asking for my opinion, I'm sorry to say, but I liked it much better the way it was before, honestly. It made it quieter and easier to self-isolate. Being out in a wide open warehouse area like that, not really my cup of tea. And rumor has it, from what I heard, they even plan on tearing down the building that is connected to us, every room that's in there, and just keeping the outer shell. It's the assembly building, and I have been there multiple times. I probably wasn't there since the last work video I did, but from what I hear, they're gonna tear down every room in there as well as the little space that's in between the two buildings, and they're gonna make it one giant devoid area of nothing aside from the occasional few bathrooms. I'm gonna miss those days. But when they were tearing down the walls, they let us hit them with like giant sledgehammers and crap like that, and to my recollection, I've never been granted permission to do that before. I even have a recording of it. Well, Zach said I could. And I'm done. Sorry, you couldn't really see the wall that well. You can only hear the sound of the hammer, but I still did it. And that was back in August, and I've been dying to post that somewhere, but I don't know where. I shared it with some family members and friends, but there you go. That's me destroying a wall for the first time. Wait, would that be the first time? Anyway, so of course this means they had to move around a bunch of crap, specifically shelving that they had used for inventory in the past. And this also means I couldn't really do what I was good at doing and what I had, been taught to do. So for nearly 2 whole months, all I did every day I was there was just clean the sleeves. This was before we had discovered other things I could do. Now, what happened to the shelves that they were using before? Well, a number of them are still in the assembly building, but they were actually offering to give them away. I think they were selling them, or it might have been for free. I'm gonna pick the prior. My dad was one of the people that bought one of those shelves, interestingly enough. Yes, shelf 99 is now in the garage right below me. The same shelf I used to work right in front of. So change did have that benefit, I'll give you that. Inventory is back in business, except it's a little bit different this time. Firstly, the shelves are much larger now, like 10 feet tall or something, and instead of the whole row being labeled, 4 sections of the row are labeled. So, I obviously just can't grab the whole thing. The sheets they are printing out for me are now laid out vertically instead of horizontally like before. Again, another downgrade. I kind of liked it the other way. I also don't really use the stools anymore, if you remember the Stuck with a Second video. I mean, if I needed them, they're still there, but they're kind of just tucked in the corner. But just the other day, even if I had both of my stools still next to me, there's a bit of a new dilemma. It's not an end of the world type deal, but I recently learned that I have to look at each individual part for lot number. And I think, if I remember correctly, before I was just assuming that if they all look similar and they're all grouped together, I kind of just assumed that they all counted as the same thing. But no, there's going to be slight differences between a few of them. They didn't tell me that before, back when the rooms were still standing. I guess they just let it slide back then, but those days are no more. For smaller parts, this isn't a problem. The only concern I have is with really big parts like this big or something, I need a lot of room to count each individual one to make sure they're not all the same number. And it is kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, nothing that's going to destroy my well-being, but it is kind of tedious. It's going to take me a while. It is good to be back in business, doing the, traditional thing. It is good to be doing that again. I'm back to the classics. But there are other things that I have learned since 2022, and I think it's worth mentioning. Apparently, my company is not just a company that dabbles in airplane parts. They also dabble in Jeep extensions. My old supervisor, who is the only person to be younger than me at this whole company, everybody else is older. He works in this building next to the main building. I think it's the tallest building out of all the buildings, actually. I don't know if it's the largest area taking space of them all, but it is pretty tall. I assumed that that building was part of a different company, but apparently not. We own that building. That also kind of means we own a bunch of smaller, kind of like trailer type buildings for, I'm guessing, storage. I really have no idea. And they announced during a little group meeting in Thanksgiving that they have a YouTube channel where they like to make videos on their Jeeps and their Jeep experiments. Their channel, when I first searched it up, had like 290 followers, and 2 months later it has boosted up to like 1,500 or close to that. I would give out their name if you were curious to see it, but like I said, it's a private company, not really meant to be out there in the world. But I will show their excellent drone work though.
On this adventure, we embark on an overland trip to the Colorado Rockies with the expectation of scenic routes and beautiful views. What we got won't soon be forgotten.
Yeah, they've been going to like Colorado, Arkansas, and Texas and just camping out and stuff. And there's really only one state that touches all three of them. I even took this picture of my arm on one of the vehicles they might have used on one of their journeys in those videos to those states. Or at least one of the vehicles that had their logo on it that was parked in between the buildings, like, you know, in the little yard. But yeah, a shit ton of shit has changed. Some of it good, some of it not so much. But for whatever the case, I'm glad it happened because, you know, blog time. But it's probably time I need to confess something, and this is not new. There have been occurrences where I get distracted at work sometimes, and I know this is not an abnormal thing, but it's usually to either check a message or to change what I'm listening to, and it probably happens more times than it should. Yeah, with some practice, I feel like we can improve a little bit. But listening to, say, myself or other content creators, it does make it easier to focus and get through the day. Just having something on my mind other than just work, it kind of does help. I love these people and I love counting stuff, but I would be lying if I said I don't occasionally get bored sometimes, which is why I have my phone to listen to podcasts or whatever. There will be times where I get in the zone. Okay, it's gonna happen. With this kind of autism, that's not something we can change. What we probably can do, though, is lower the amount of times I am looking at a screen when I'm on the clock. Unless, of course, I'm using that screen to look at the time and know when it's time for lunch or to take a break or whatever. Like 3 days ago on January 18th, after I had already begun the script for this episode, I had some scam text conversation with a stranger and it was distracting me for quite a while. It started off as someone who must have gotten the wrong number and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I hope it didn't bother you." And I'm like, "Oh, you're fine, a good day." But then it turned into some like flirty crap, which admittedly was getting me excited. I'm not gonna lie, I'm sorry. But I showed it to the human resources person who I kind of just see as my boss. I mean, I have a number of bosses really. It's kind of hard to explain, but basically I showed it to one of my bosses, or if you want to call her that. And she said, "Yeah, block her. Before you know it, she's gonna be asking for money and all sorts of stuff." And I'm like, okay. I left one bonus message that said, "I'm sorry, we're not allowed to talk anymore, but I hope your day is good." And then I finally got rid of the number. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed about that. But, you know, if you're gonna meet friends, you gotta meet them in person, I guess. So yeah, if any of my coworkers who left a long while ago are wondering what the company is like in 2024, I hope this was informative enough. Until next time, stay safe, stay clean, and stay cool. Goodbye.